There's one beautiful verse that I'd like to talk about. If you go a little before that, verse 11, let's start from verse 11. And of this gospel I was appointed a herald and an apostle and a teacher, and that is why I am suffering as I am. Yet this is no cause for shame, because I know whom I believed, and I'm convinced that he is able to guard what I've entrusted to him until that day. Such an amazing, amazing passage. And I'm going to talk about this, some of the reason why Paul writes this. Paul, as he comes to the end of his life, and this Roman imprisonment, probably he didn't expect, he believed that, I believe he expected, I would say that, I would correct myself on that. He expected it to happen, but maybe didn't expect the imprisonment to prolong, and probably he may have thought that because he was he was raised he was a Roman citizen, probably he might be rescued. But this season of Paul's life was somewhere, when you read the text that he's writing, maybe he thought that, maybe people would have looked at his life and thought that he is a failure because he had such a glorious ministry, and all of a sudden everything came to an end. There's a sudden end to the ministry. He was not able to travel much. He was just in Rome, meeting people and writing letters. So it is possible that some could have thought of Paul's end as a failure, or maybe Paul himself could have gone through that emotion that maybe everything has come to a sudden end. I didn't have like a ceremony or something, or a farewell, nothing. I'm just in a jail, home under house arrest. So it is in one of those moments he writes like this, and he says this: I know whom I am believed. He says, I know whom I have believed, and I'm convinced that he is able to guard what I've entrusted to him until that day. This verse has a lot of one second. I'll just turn off this. Can you see the verse clearly? I know whom I believe. Right. If you go back to the first century and look at what this means in the context, Paul talks of a life that he has entrusted to God. And he, in this passage, is urging Timothy, saying, you also do the same. Trust God for everything. And there is a word that is used, that is paratheke, Paratheke. Paratheke. Again, the pronunciation might not be right, but this word means deposit committed to someone's trust. A deposit committed to someone's trust. So a man might deposit something with his friend. Back in the day, they didn't have banks like us. They didn't have central banks like we have, or world banks like we have. So a man might deposit something with a friend to be kept for his children in the future, or his loved ones. And in the Greek culture, it was very common that people will put their gold, their wealth inside the temple. Okay, so suppose if I'm old and about to pass away, and my children are there, and I want to make sure that wealth reaches them, I can go to one of the temples, because the temples in those days were like banks. So you can entrust your wealth, your money, your jewelry, everything to them, and you can be 110% sure that it will reach your generation. Because the temples, the ancient Greek temples, they took this task very secretly. And it is said that there is no more sacred duty than guarding the safe deposit and returning it when it was claimed in due time. There was a famous Greek story which was told about how sacred a trust was. The Spartans were very famous for their strict honor and honesty. So there was a man called Miletus. He came to certain Glaucus of Sparta. So he said that he had heard some great reports of how honest people are and how they will return the wealth and all of that. And he said, I have turned half of my possessions into money, and I want to deposit it with you so that one day my sons, when they come to claim it, I want you to give it to them. So he gave the money and all of that. Years went by, And this man died, and his sons came to Sparta to see Glaucus. And what happened is they produced all the receipts, the documents to identify the amount and everything. And what happened is this man Glaucus wasn't very honest. In fact, he claimed that no such deposit was made. And see, back in the day, there are no transactions that are stored online. You can go and verify, no such thing. If someone says, no, that didn't happen, there was no way to verify that. But it happened that this man, Glaucus, who took the money but didn't return it, eventually was convicted by what he did and decided to return money. Now, he was not convicted by the Holy Spirit yet. That's not the point. The point is, there were people who were like, probably held him accountable, who spoke about this and said, spoke about the importance of returning money. So even if someone tried to kind of escape from the responsibility, the temple system was such that if someone deposited the money, it will reach that person for sure. Okay? So eventually this man Glaucus called the sons of Miletus and gave it back to them, settled all their accounts. So this story reminds us of how important it is to, when you're enter someone with that wealth, they will give it back to you. So with this as a background, Paul writes this passage. He's saying, I know whom I have believed, and I'm convinced he is able to guard what I've entrusted to him until that very day. What is Paul saying here? He's saying that I have made my safe deposit with God. What is the meaning of that? He's saying, I have entrusted both my work and my life to him. Because at this point, you see, it seems like Paul's life was cut off in mid-career. He was not too old. He was not like a grandpa who couldn't travel. He's still able to do a lot of things. He was very active. He was very physically active. But it seems like his life has been cut off in mid-career, that he should now die as a criminal in the Roman prison. Just imagine the amount of work he has done. The churches he started, the work of preaching the gospel, all of this. He's done everything, and now he's at a point where people are talking, saying, glorious life, but look at his end. All of a sudden, he's in a Roman prison. Maybe Paul was feeling that way. And very likely, Timothy also felt that way. Felt that his master did not do really well. Cut off mid-career. But Paul has a different perspective on this, and I think this is very important for all of us, because when we come to serve Christ, we often sacrifice a lot, right? Often a lot of things are put on stake. Sometimes life is difficult, and we may wonder, God, our friends are doing so well in life, but here I am serving you, but there are so many challenges, there are struggles, and feels like I'm a loser. But this is what the Bible reminds us. This is what the Bible reminds us. When we come to God, we have put our life and our work in his hands. If you look at the life of Paul, the work that he did for, I think, maybe about 20 to 30 years has set the foundational doctrines of Christianity for the next 2,000 years. Now, he entrusted God and believed that God, whatever I do, the seed I sow, the way I do things will have an impact on your kingdom. He was not doing it for his glory, but he did it for God's glory. And what happened? God has used a man like that. Because today, if you talk about New Testament theology, you cannot skip the character Paul. He is such a great influence, such a great man, that his life speaks volumes today. There are courses that are built around this man's life. You know why? He says, I know whom I have believed. The question that you have to wake up every day morning and ask yourself is, whom have I believed? He says like this, I know whom I have believed, and I'm convinced he is able to guard what I've entrusted to him until that very day. I remember when I was coming to ministry, I would read this word so often and I'd be like, God, I trust in you. I believe in you. I believe in you. I believe that you will guard my life. Because sometimes, when I go around in the city, I feel little, like my life is in danger. There are threats that have come, but I often go back to this passage and I say, I know whom I have believed, and I'm convinced that he is able to guard. I've seen God do mighty things. Today morning I was praying for something, And God granted that prayer. God answered that prayer. He is able to take care of your life. What it takes is for us to believe that He will do what He said He will do. He will guard my life. That's very important. We have to live our life with such a level of conviction. That's the Christian life. It's not about, I go to church, it's just a Sunday thing. No, we have to live for Christ. We have to live our life in such a way where Jesus is everything for us. Where we say, I know what I've done, I know whom I believed, and He is able to guard. And you have to be sure of that. Now, why is Paul saying, I'm convinced? You look at this word, he's saying, I am convinced. Why is he saying I'm convinced? Because, see, to Paul, he was a Pharisee. He knew the Old Testament very well. And then he came to Christ. He understood who Jesus is. For him, relationship with God is not intellectualism. It's not about knowledge, but a personal relationship. There are people who often come to Christ and they love the aspect of knowledge, which is good, which is important, but we must understand that with knowledge alone we cannot get anywhere, but a personal relationship with Christ. So when it comes to learning, acquiring knowledge, when you're attending Bible studies, I want you to know something, that relationship with God is primary. Because when you come here with that focus on Christ, God, I want to love you more, I want to learn more about you, then you'll grow in a deeper relationship. But if you're coming here just to learn the Bible, just to learn another subject without a relationship, without a prayer life, then everything you do is in vain. Paul says, I am convinced. What does it mean I'm convinced? He's walked with the Lord. He had a personal relationship with God, learned about God, and now he is saying for sure that I know He will guard my life forever. That kind of a conviction. So for Paul, I like what William Barclay says. He says like this, for Paul, it was inconceivable that he should fail him. It was inconceivable. Like even the thought that God will fail me would not even occur to him. That's the kind of life we have to live. We should believe that God, you will not fail me. That's the belief that we should have. And so he says, I know whom I believed. And I'm convinced that He is able to guard what I've entrusted to Him until that day.